Finland governments have lifted some restriction placed on Simon Ekpa, the Prime Minister of Biafra Republic government in exile, as Biafrans all over the world jubilate over the good news. According to information from our reliable source, suggests that Finnish authorities have granted Simon Ekpa more access to his family and lifted certain restrictions while investigations continues, countering Nigerian media narratives. However, as Biafrans all over the world jubilate over the good news, some saboteurs are sad over the development. Supporters of Simon Ekpa feel happy the news from Finland, but enemies of Simon Ekpa feel disappointed by Finnish authority. Meanwhile, some people have criticized the Nigerian government for allegedly spreading misinformation about Simon Ekpa's situation, pointing to inconsistencies in their statements. In another report from our reliable source, suggests that the governor of Anambra State, Charles Chukwuma Soludo, has placed 10 million naira bounty on Biafra army. Governor Charles Soludo announced a N10 million bounty for information leading to the capture of Biafra Liberation Army commanders and its fighters. He accused them of causing insecurity in the southeast, most especially in Anambra State. Meanwhile, some critics have accused the Anambra State governor for being responsible for attacks in the state. Instead of accepting blames for his inability to provide adequate security for the state, he is now blame freedom fighters who willingly took it upon themselves to provide their people from external invaders and terrorists in Nigerian military uniform. Let me tell you about a story that's been unfolding across different parts of the world, a story that's both inspiring and controversial. It centers around Simon Ekpa, a man many consider a leader of the Biafra movement, and how recent events have put him in the spotlight. This tale is a mix of politics, personal resilience, and the never-ending quest for justice and freedom. It's not just about one man, it's about a people, a cause, and the complexities that come with it. So here we are, starting in a place far from Nigeria, Finland to be precise. Finland, known for its snowy landscapes and saunas, might seem like an unlikely setting for the story of a Biafran leader. But this is where Simon Ekpa has been based for years. He's become a prominent figure in the Biafra movement, which continues to demand independence for the southeastern part of Nigeria. Simon Ekpa's voice has echoed far beyond the borders of Nigeria, thanks to the internet and his steadfast commitment to the cause. But life hasn't been smooth sailing for Simon Ekpa. You see, in recent months, Simon Ekpa has faced restrictions from Finnish authorities. These restrictions made it hard for Simon Ekpa to move freely, to see his family as often as he'd like, and to engage fully with the movement he leads. For Simon Ekpa, it was a tough period. Imagine being in a place where you're far from home, carrying the weight of an entire movement on your shoulders, and then facing additional challenges that make your life even harder. It's the kind of struggle that would test anyone's resolve. And then came a glimmer of hope. Recently, Finnish authorities decided to ease some of the restrictions on Simon Ekpa. This decision didn't mean everything was suddenly perfect, or that all issues were resolved. But it was a step forward. It meant Simon Ekpa could now have better access to his family while the investigations against him continued. For months, many of them had felt like they were up against a wall, dealing with what they believed was misinformation and propaganda from the Nigerian government. This decision by the Finnish authorities seemed to validate their faith in Simon Ekpa and his cause. But, as with any story involving politics and activism, not everyone was thrilled. There are always critics, opponents, and those who see things differently. Some called Simon Ekpa a troublemaker. Others saw him as a threat to peace and stability. And then there were those who simply didn't trust him or the movement he represents. The easing of restrictions on Simon Ekpa didn't change their minds. If anything, it made them even more determined to push back against him and his supporters. Now, while all of this was happening in Finland, there was another chapter of the story unfolding back in Nigeria, specifically in the southeastern region of Nigeria, where the Biafra movement has its roots. This is a region with a complex history marked by a bloody civil war in the late 1960s and decades of unrest since then. The dream of an independent Biafra remains alive for many people there, but it's also a dream that's fraught with challenges. One of those challenges is the ongoing tension between Biafran activists and the Nigerian government. This tension often plays out in the form of protests, crackdowns, and, unfortunately, violence. Recently, Charles Chukwuma Soludo, the governor of Anambra State, decided to take a bold step. Charles Chukwuma Soludo announced a bounty of 10 million naira for information leading to the